Welcome to Disabilities and the Can Do Attitude, a community conversation presented by the Middletown Township Human Relations Commission. I'm James Henderson, disability advocate and member of the Middletown Township HRC, your host for this evening. We have a great panel tonight. Their life as someone with a disability or their life's work dedicated to the disability community goes beyond what they've been able to overcome, achieve, and accomplish. They have goals in mind, ideas for a more inclusive environment, and knowledge to share that I'm sure will benefit all of you. We have Tanya Schofling, Deputy Administrator of Developmental Programs in Bucks County with us for the Q&A portion after the presentation. We have Middletown's very own Anna Payne to moderate and explain how Q&A will be carried out. She's currently serving as Vice Chairperson on the Board of Supervisors, co-founder of the Bucks County Cystic Fibrosis Alliance, and member of the Pennsylvania Rare Disease Advisory Council. Everyone from my panel, Tanya, Anna, I thank you for being here. You all do great work. I appreciate all attending this evening. At almost 50 million, disabled individuals make up the largest minority group. Disability can affect anyone at any age. It can occur at birth, like I was born with spina bifida, a chronic, lifelong physical disability which does not define me. Or you could become temporarily or permanently disabled from an injury or illness. Disability doesn't discriminate as it can affect all individuals no matter what race, color, ethnicity, religion, sex, gender, sexual orientation, all individuals. Disability is diversity. According to the US Department of Labor, we often use the term diversity to refer to differences among individuals such as race, gender, age, and religion. Diversity actually encompasses the infinite range of individuals' unique attributes and experiences. So people with disabilities contribute to diversity. Businesses can actually thrive by ensuring to integrate people with disabilities into their workforce and customer base. I say that with emphasis because that is very important to me. You really don't see businesses calling attention to months dedicated to raising awareness for the disability community. October is Spina Bifida Awareness, and today is World Spina Bifida Day. You do see advertising, marketing, and funding for other causes that are more widely recognized, and for those national days like National Coffee Day that attract so many, which in turn help businesses to grow. And yes, every cause is important, and I cannot wait to celebrate with my free cup of joe on this special day. But I urge businesses in this township to make months like Spina Bifida Month and Disability Pride Month just as important. There are resources out there and events such as Teal on the Hill, which is an annual event where individuals with spina bifida come together to advocate. But most of this information you have to search for. The less we are educated, the less it is learned. Therefore, we are not as interested. So what I would like is for at least one thing to be learned this evening that you can share with others. Let that knowledge spread and therefore gain a better understanding and perspective on issues and challenges the disability community face and how we overcome and succeed to live just like everyone else. Now I'll share my very own quote. Never give up, quit your crying, live by my motto, keep on trying. Thank you. I'll turn it to Anna Payne. Anna?
Hi, everyone. I just want to welcome you to the webinar and thank you for taking the time out of your evening to attend tonight. I am Anna Payne, Middletown Township Supervisor, and I am very honored to participate in this event, and I'm glad to be your moderator for this evening. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Monica Albert Still, who's an RN and BSN, Secretary for the Board of Directors for Disability Rights Pennsylvania. I will let her finish all her accolades and talk a little bit about herself. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monica. Monica?
Thank you very much, Anna. Good evening. I'd like to thank all of you for having me speak to you about my spina bifida journey. Like James, I also have spina bifida, so happy Spina Bifida Day. My name is Monica Albert Still, as you've been told. I was born 57 years ago, before the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, The ADA or IDEA was the law. My life can be broken up into two parts when it comes to my disability, before and after the laws and protections were in place. The doctors waited 3 months to do the surgery to close my back. They sent me home with a gaping wound that my mother had to care for. They told her not to get too attached to me. I found out about 10 years ago, after looking in my medical records, that they thought this would spare my mother the burden of my existence. They believed that I would get an infection and die. I guess when I was still going strong, they decided to do the surgery. At the time, it was not unusual for disabled children to be denied or delayed care. Often they went straight from the hospital into an institution. This would be unheard of today, thank goodness. My parents had to go to the school board to get me into the town's public school. They brought my nursery school teacher and my pediatrician to attest to the fact that I could be, quote unquote, what was called at the time mainstream. My mom taught me to read when I was 2. Once in school, I couldn't even get the medical care I needed from the school nurse. My mother had to quit her job so that she could provide my care every day at lunchtime. She also had to accompany me on every field trip, or else they would not take me. Without IDEA or IEPs, there was no other recourse but to take on the care herself. There was never any question about college for me. I was going. For as long as I could remember, I wanted to be a nurse, probably because I spent a lot of time in hospitals when I was a kid. I applied to nursing schools at 4 universities. I was accepted into each university, but not the nursing program. This was just before the ADA existed. The deans of each nursing school saw in my school record that I had spina bifida. They assumed that I could not do the work of a nurse. I ended up meeting with one of the deans and was accepted into their nursing program. I graduated as valedictorian of my nursing class with my BSN. I have spent the past 35 years working with patients at the bedside, and finally, when my body said no more, I retired from my position as a home health care agency administrator. Currently, I spend my time volunteering as an advocate for disability rights and also working with Disability Rights PA, which is a wonderful organization. Life is much better with the laws and protections that we now have in place, but the ADA and all were only the beginning. We must change the hearts and minds of society about living as a disabled person. DEIA is one way to start us down the path of real inclusion and diversity. With early diagnosis of spina bifida came both good and bad results. The good was that parents and their medical team could prepare. The bad news was that parents were still being told incorrect assumptions about living with spina bifida. Schooling is improved, but even now I hear stories of how IEPs are not meeting the needs of disabled children. One story is how in 2019, a Pittsburgh area school invited special education students to vote for the student government and attend student school dances for the first time. That's nearly 30 years after the ADA was put in place. Disabled voters are often disenfranchised because not all polling places in PA are accessible. The ADA has no enforcement other than to sue the violator, and that puts disabled people in an adversarial position when trying to ensure their rights. This is not conducive to embracing inclusion and access. In fact, it makes people less likely to see disabled people as people. Up until very recently, disaster planning did not include how to evacuate disabled people. We clearly have more work to do. Disability is a variation of being human. I should be seen as a person who just happens to have spina bifida. See my disability because it will tell you what I need, but see me as a fellow person. I'm a member of the community and should be treated as such. Before COVID, 25% of citizens in this country identified as disabled. 1/4 of our citizens should be seen out and about in public living their lives. There should be representation of disabled people in media and in positions of power. Access and accommodation should not be an afterthought. They should be at the forefront of planning. The ADA needs to be updated because it does not include much of the technology. It didn't exist when it was adopted. I do have hope that with the changes I've seen in my lifetime thus far, that I will live to see further changes that will allow disabled people to have full participation in society. I want my granddaughter, Tyler, to live in a world where ability doesn't hinder anyone for having a fulfilling life in our community. Thank you for listening, and thank you to James for inviting me to speak. Have a pleasant evening.
Thank you so much, Monica, for sharing your story. It's so powerful to share our stories. Before I introduce our next presenter, I did want to mention and explain a little bit how the Q&A worked. So you guys can type your questions into the chat, and then after the presentation's over, we've allotted some time for folks to answer those questions. So if you have a specific question for a specific speaker, if you put their name on it, so we know when we go back to the questions, you know, who we should address to make sure that they're answered properly. And before I introduce our next speaker, Monica actually reminded me that there was a quote I wanted to share. So when we say that someone is suffering with an illness or has a disability, we take away that person's power. We automatically weaken them. So I would like to say, for me, I have cystic fibrosis and stage 4 colon cancer. So in my case, let's start saying, normalizing that we are living with whatever illness or disability, and let's give them their power back and the power that they deserve. And I hope that's one of the key takeaways from tonight's webinar. So with that being said, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who was just on, Rachel Chandler. She has a bachelor's degree in psychology, a minor in sociology, and I threw her off a little bit, so I also want to apologize.
No, it's okay. No worries.
And she works with folks with disabilities for several years, and I will let her get started. So thank you, Rachel.
You're welcome, and thanks everyone for having me, and thanks James for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. And I'll get started. Living most of my life in the rural county of Bucks County, it is a beautiful family-friendly place to grow up. I received a great education in grade school and high school from Council Rock schools. Then that allowed me to get a college degree and helped me get to where I am today. Yes, these are the reasons why my family chose to live here, which is great when you're little. What happens when you're getting older and people around you start driving and gaining their independence? You start to realize that Bucks County may not be so disability friendly. The cost of living is incredibly high and transportation is lacking. These are two factors that greatly impact someone with a disability. I have cerebral palsy, currently have a full-time job, and am still living with my parents. Many people with disabilities can work and want to work. We need to give them that opportunity. If people with disabilities don't have access to good paying jobs, they will not be able to support themselves in other ways, such as housing and living the independent lives they choose. Living in a rural area, most shopping is at least a half-hour away. If you don't drive, you would think the next reliable option would be Bucks County Transport. From my experience, this is one of the only options. Having few options of accessible public transportation can be detrimental to someone with a disability. The issue of accessible, reliable transportation is not only an issue in Bucks County, but most likely an issue in other small rural counties. Many people with disabilities want to work. They will need reliable, accessible transportation to get to and from work. They will need money from their job to support themselves, to live their daily lives. Making both of these resources available to someone can be life-changing and lead them to a successful life. How do the people of Bucks County help us do this? I believe it starts with communication. We need to have better communication between organizations who are helping a person with a disability find what they need. Continuous communication between all organizations who are helping someone from start to finish. We need organizations whose workers know their resources from top to bottom. If you are a housing counselor and an information and referralist refers their low-income client to you, you should know what resources are, what you should know what apartments are out there to help, or are out there to be able to help that person. Having accessible, reliable resources gives the person with a disability a sense of relief. They know that they came to the right place and will not be passed around. They can work towards living the independent life they choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for sharing your story of what it's like to live with your disability in Bucks County. So the next person on our list here I'm going to introduce is Keely Milbourne. She's the Associate Director of Office of Disability Services at Holy Family University, and she's worked in the field of accessible design for over 10 years. So with that, I will let Keely tell her story.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the introduction. And thank you all for being here. And Monica and Rachel, I really appreciated your stories. They just really resonated with me. So I'm feeling good about going after those. My presentation is not scripted, so it'll be a little bit different, but you kind of set the platform. So thank you. I just wanted to communicate my pronouns are she, her, and also it's standard in my field to describe the visuals, and so that's to promote accessibility for individuals who are blind or have low vision. So I'm a white female with dark blonde wavy hair. I'm in a white room with some art in the walls and lots of plants. So just an example of how you could easily promote accessibility. I like to say we make things work for us, right? We design things in a way, we communicate in a way that works. But I think something, especially for individuals who don't have physical disabilities, may not have or have like loved ones close to them with physical disabilities, don't realize what that means for other people. So I actually want to use this Zoom call format as a way that this is a fully accessible product for anyone who has the internet, and the devices to access it. It's rare that you can say something is fully accessible and works for everyone. But to give some examples, we have captioning now. So someone who couldn't hear experiences deafness, they can access this call, right? If they were blind and deaf, they would utilize Braille. Having the technology linked to their device would allow them to access all of this information. Someone who uses a wheelchair, like Rachel mentioned, utilizing public transportation, say, the ramp is out for or you're not able to get the ride that you need. Well, now you could tele in. So for all the things that COVID has done, that's terrible. I'd say the huge takeaway for the disabled community is now we have enhanced accessibility. So that's one thing I'm really excited about. So I encourage everyone to keep utilizing technology in ways that it can easily enhance accessibility. So again, that was just my example I wanted to give for the Zoom, as the Zoom call, since it is such a rarity. Like Anna said, I've worked with individuals with disabilities for 10 years in the higher ed setting. So that includes, individuals with physical disabilities relating to their speech, hearing, sight, mobility, navigation, as well as mental health disabilities. I work with veterans who maybe have PTSD. Monica touched on the legal guidelines that came into play that allowed her to be successful, and a lot of it was not the law. It was, right, you said your mother assisting you. So the laws they're established now. We have the ADA as of 91, but there's still a long way to go to promote accessibility to promote equity and inclusion for disabled populations. And sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. So that's kind of where my role comes into the university. It's ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act guided, but also I think that one of the biggest things that promotes equity and inclusion is awareness. So this type of community event, just having conversations, questioning, are you hiring individuals with disabilities, individuals with diverse backgrounds? I think this is the start. And I know people who don't have experience with certain cultures might be nervous to ask questions, to engage. But what I've heard over and over from students that I work with is, please ask. Please ask me about my disability. Ask me if I want to be included. Ask me if I'm okay. And by not asking is often can be more offensive than asking. So I'd encourage, again, these types of community discussions, involvement, and just to be aware of the power that you have to promote equity and inclusion just by maintaining that awareness. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kaylee. I appreciate you hopping on here tonight and talking about your background, especially working at the college. So with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker and advocate. Brian, if I butcher your name, feel free to correct it, and I apologize. Gutierrez? He's a patient advocate for the Spina Bifida Association. He has a master's in rehabilitation counseling, and he's certified in disability resources at Northern Arizona University. So with that, Brian, take it away.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Good evening. It is an honor to be here. I am deeply, deeply humbled to be here along with my fellow panelists on this webinar. My name is Brian Gutierrez, and I am from Los Angeles, California. I am 31 years of age, soon to be 32 this week, living with spina bifida, same with Monica and James. Spina bifida is actually a neuro-tube birth defect where a baby's spinal cord and column is not fully developed properly during fetal development. In addition to my diagnosis, I also have hydrocephalus, which is a neurological condition where there is buildup cerebrospinal fluid in the brain. As mentioned, I recently obtained a Master of Science degree in rehabilitation counseling, along with a certificate in career counseling and higher education. Currently, I am completing additional training where I'm working towards a graduate certificate, as mentioned, disability resources at Northern Arizona University. I am a patient advocate for the Spina Bifida Association, where I serve in various committees and collaborate with healthcare providers, including community staff and adult advocates in identifying specialized community care needs for our adult population. To date, we have about 14 Spina Bifida clinics nationwide, but fewer adult clinics than pediatric care. Additionally, there are only 2 spina bifida adult clinics in my home state of California, which is something I have been previously advocating for, is to increase the number of clinics in my state for adults living with spina bifida so that they can get more specialized care in their community or region. As someone living with spina bifida, I have faced numerous academic struggles. When I first began my college career back in 2008, I struggled with navigating the college environment, looking to find my way to succeed in higher education. I started at a community college. During my first 2 years in community college, I was placed on academic probation for 2 semesters. However, I found support when I started to use campus resources more effectively, like going to math tutoring, which math tends to be my weakest subject. I also utilized appropriate accommodations from the Disability Resource Office, such as giving more time for exams. I do have a learning disability as well that comes from hydrocephalus. And from there, I will transfer to a 4-year institution at Cal State LA, where I did both my undergrad and graduate studies there. I was also recognized by Phi Kappa Phi, which is one of the oldest and most prestigious honor societies in the nation, after being placed in the top 2% of my graduating class. Um, I feel like without the support from the Disability Resource Office and staff, and also my mentors that helped me get to where I am today, I would probably not have gone far in my journey. Aside from academic journey, I also have encountered challenges with my health. Just recently, I was diagnosed with multiple polyps in my bladder, which tends to increase my chances of developing bladder cancer. And unfortunately, I was given this diagnosis, but thankfully it was caught out early. And today I am tumor free. I knew that before I was given this diagnosis, I knew that something was wrong. After having many difficulties with my catheterization, which caused a lot of bleeding. And so I requested a cystoscopy procedure to examine my neurogenic bladder and possibly to remove the tumors. And thankfully that was done and it was successful. Um, However, as a patient living with spina bifida, I still do not have adequate specialized care to sustain a good quality of life. And this is what really motivates me to advocate and bring value to my community through education and empowerment. And it's still a challenge that I still face today. We still see many health inequities where people with disabilities are given less autonomy in our healthcare system, including participation in research studies. So these challenges really gave me a motivation and perspective to advocate for others and has allowed me to utilize the appropriate resources, such as the Disability Resource Office in college, also self-advocacy, and of course, my faith to overcome these challenges that truly impact my disability. From what I've learned in overcoming these challenges is that it takes a lot of self-advocacy and education to truly understand your needs, limitations, but also strengths and how you view your disability and how that impacts you on a daily basis. It is important that one knows how to self-advocate for themselves to achieve their goals, but just know that it is a journey, not a destination. Determination is key, no matter the struggle. What I would like to see and hope from society is to truly honor and commemorate the disabilities community, especially in the month of July, which is Disability Pride Month. Often people with disabilities are neglected in change-centered conversations, including policy change. We do have a lot of minority groups today, but our disabilities community gets excluded. And quite frankly, in how we build and construct and promote new ideas to enhance the quality of life for many. Unfortunately, ableism, which is a form of discrimination that targets against people with disabilities, still has a huge influence in our society, where people with disabilities are given less opportunities compared to their able-bodied counterparts, specifically on employment. I think it is important that we fully address ableism that will influence change to identify barriers and building innovative solutions to maximize accessibility, like Kelly mentioned earlier, for citizens from every walk of life in all aspects of our society. And to close it off, I really want to thank James for this opportunity to have shared my story. And, and I hope that my story can influence others to really to make an impact and to create change. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Let's keep climbing mountains. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing your story and your expertise with us tonight. The next panelist I'm going to introduce is the host of the Then Wait podcast, and his name is Luke Bishop. So, Luke, your turn.
How you guys doing? First of all, I'd just like to say this is a honor and privilege to be a part of this. I've been excited this week to do this, and hopefully I won't be here all day talking so I don't really care to talk. But I just like to say my name is Lucas Jones. I'm from Maryland, and I currently live in Cleveland, Tennessee. And I was doing a lot of working at jobs where because of my wheelchair, and maybe they didn't want to move me up. I wasn't able to move up in the companies, so I decided to quit, and I started to host a podcast um, for my confidence in helping other people with confidence. So I'm just say the my podcast really is about promoting inclusion. Um, you hear this thing they say, out of sight, out of mind. I can't blame somebody that doesn't know because they don't see it or have to deal with it on on an everyday thing. Sorry, let me I'm getting a hold of ahead of myself. Um, so I like to bridge the gap between able-bodied and disabled. Like I said, if you don't know, I can't fault you if you don't know. I want to change people's minds about disabled. I know growing up, I didn't feel like I was going to have the life I could live being in a wheelchair. I never had a problem making friends, but my friends always did things I couldn't do, playing basketball, football. I would have loved to been on a football team and play basketball. So, but I had to, I lived through my little brother, him playing basketball, him doing these sports and things like that. And I realized that I could have the same life. Obviously, there's some things that I cannot do. And once I accepted that, my life got a little bit happier. So I can't go back and tell my 15-year-old self that everything will be all right, but I can let people know that you can still live a fulfilled life. You can still do things that you never thought you could do. Like I said, I'm not going to be here um, that long, but I do want to tell a little story. Um, I recently just started smoking cigars, and I definitely love this community because they treat me like everybody else. So on Wednesdays we have a thing called Whiskey Wednesdays where we all get together, and I started sitting at the table, and I would, when people come in, I would get my seat up, and they would get mad at me, and they would say, "Well, Luke, why are you giving your seat up? You deserve this. You deserve a spot at the table just like everybody else." And I didn't understand what they were saying until one day it clicked. I'm doing my podcast, reaching out to people that influence change. They have to see my disability, and because they see it, they have to make changes. There's one of my good friends does events. Now, when he do meetings, he says, "Is this handicap assessment?" Because we got somebody that does this, that comes as like to support us. So they start to change the way they see us, and not that they didn't before, but it's that out of sight, out of mind thing. So they have to take account for me and everybody else. So one thing I want people and the panelists up here to know that once you have a seat at the table, and you're changing people's lives and you change the way people see us as disabled members, keep that. Don't stay at the table. Continue to make change because we still, even though we have a lot of progress, we still have a long way to go, and I believe that we can honestly change the world if we put our mind to it. So that's it. Hopefully you got something not good out of that. Like I said, I'm not a big talker, but this I gotta get up. I like to get out of my comfort zone and do things. So I appreciate y'all, everybody here, and I just want to say happy birthday. Brian said he had a birthday this week, and I don't know you that well, man, but happy birthday, man. I hope it's a great one. And James, thank you for inviting me on here, and just I appreciate it. So.
Thank you so much, Lucas, for sharing your story with us and being here tonight. So the next person I'm going to introduce is our next panelist, Kalina. If I butcher your last name, I apologize. Feel free to correct it. You know what? I'm not even going to try. I'm just not. But she's a special ed teacher at Bucksmont Academy. So with that, so I don't butcher your name, Kalina.
Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's having a great night. My name's Kalina Chihoki, and yes, I work at Bucksmont Academy as a special education teacher. I'm going on my 4th year there. But yeah, I also live with a disability, and I often deal with body pain, fatigue, balance issues, and issues walking long distances. And throughout the years, I've learned to advocate for myself, do self-care, stay humble, patient, and take one day at a time. And most of all, I learned to treat everyone with kindness because you never know what another person may be going through. And my dream is to teach children by day, teach college online, write books, and possibly have a family of my own someday. As a teacher, I've learned that life is a journey of lifelong lessons, and everyone at one point or another needs help sometimes, disabled or not. We are all people, and people with disabilities want to be seen as just that, as people, and not be defined by their disabilities, but seen for their abilities and strengths. Everyone deserves a chance at a success story, and my success story comes from God, my mother, and many other amazing people in my support circle that believed in me. I still can't believe where I am today. The trick to success is never give up on your dreams, stay determined, learn and grow from others, and most of all, try your best in all you do. Also, it is also all right if dreams change as well along the way. There will be struggles and tears, but there'll also be rewards and successes in the end. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalina. So our next person, panelist that I'm going to introduce is Jessica. If I also pronounce your name wrong, feel free to correct me. Keo, and she's the founder and president of Faith Above My Ability. So with that, Jessica, take it away.
Thanks, Anna, and thanks, James, for hosting this fantastic panel. Like Anna said, my name is Jessica Keo. I am the founder of a nonprofit called Faith Above My Ability. And actually, before I go too much further, I do want to physically describe myself for anyone who may need that physical description. So I am wearing a black blazer, square-ish teal glasses. I have shoulder length blonde hair, and I do use a power wheelchair to navigate the world around me. So to back up a little bit, again, I'm Jessica Keo. I'm a special education teacher, but I am also the founder of a nonprofit called Faith Above My Ability. And I, like I said, have a disability myself. It has been quite a journey. I was born with a disability, going through many different doctor's appointments throughout my 33 years of life thus far. I recently found my diagnosis, even though I was born with my disability. So I have a rare type of spinal muscular atrophy that I have had since birth. Tonight, I did want to talk about my experience in public education and why I am a teacher and why I do what I do. So throughout my public education, K to 12 career, I didn't see anyone that looked like me doing what I wanted to do. I felt a lot of feelings of stress and anxiety when it came to time for college. I knew I was going to college. That wasn't a question, but the how was I going to do it? Because I do need the physical help of putting my shoes on, getting dressed, getting showered, all of that kind of stuff. So all of that came with a lot of anxiety for me and a lot of stress. And again, not seeing someone who looked like me or anything like that doing what I wanted to do, put a lot of questions in my head. So my family ended up moving during the middle of my high school experience. I know, great for a 16-year-old, but we moved to Westchester, Pennsylvania, which is where I currently live and teach in Westchester. And when we moved, we happened to move next to another young adult, just a couple of years older than I was at the time, with a physical disability, used a wheelchair, and he had cerebral palsy. So because we moved, I found out about the undergraduate school that I went to, which was Edinburgh University. And that's where I ended up going to college. So backtracking a little bit, I know I said I'm a special education teacher, but I do strive to make meaningful change in like post-secondary outcomes. And I'm writing my dissertation on that. Just because I know what it feels like to not be sure of what I was going to do and the practical aspects of that. And I want my students to know what they're capable of and not have as many red tape barriers that I experienced. And in the past couple of years, I was privileged enough to witness and advocate for a piece of legislation in Pennsylvania with many of my colleagues and fellow advocates with disabilities that ultimately changed the medical assistance income limits for people with disabilities. And that's important because another part of my journey was when I was about a year into teaching, I received a letter stating that I would no longer be receiving care services. So again, a lot of stress and frustration because without those care services, I can't get to work and do what I love to do. So my 22-year-old self started advocating, and within the past year and a half, we were able to pass Act 69, which increases the income limits for people with disabilities who work in PA. So again, I just want to bring this back to my students because everything that I do that is hopefully benefiting my students, and I'm setting an example and being the teacher that shows what's possible even when you have a disability. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you for sharing your story, and also thank you for your work on Act 69. So next presenter is somebody I actually know personally, so I'm excited she's here with us tonight, Dr. Josie Badger, and she is president of J. Badger Consulting. And with that, Josie, you can take it away.
Hi, everyone, and it is so exciting to be here with so many of my friends. And James, thanks for having us. Middletown, thanks for allowing this to be a part of your night and your meetings. You all, and I included, have been blessed with an hour almost of amazing stories from true experts, not only in their own lives, but in the disability experience. And I am so grateful that you are taking the time to hear from us because we believe nothing about us without us. And as you all who are attending are leaders in your community, in your county, in your positions, you are welcoming us, the people that you're making legislation for, making decisions about. You are letting us be at that table with you. I'm so grateful for this experience. As we start to pull back and reflect on what was said tonight, we heard a lot of stories of difficulty, of fighting the system, but we heard a lot of stories of overcoming that. I will never say overcoming my disability because my disability has empowered me to do these things, but society has been what has burdened me. But now, what is it that you need to do? Why are you here listening to us? It makes our hearts warm and fuzzy. That's nice, but that's not why we're here. We're here to encourage and motivate all of you to step up and make a difference. You might have listened to my dear friend Monica's story and, well, what am I going to do? I don't run a college. I don't run a nursing program. But from each of these stories, you can take away a tidbit of change that you have direct control over. When the ADA was passed, it was a wonderful, life-changing, countrywide change that actually influenced the world. But that's not where the real change happens. Change doesn't happen in a law. Change happens by a person, by a mindset. And that's where all of you come into play. When I was 11 years old, my parents recognized that, I mean, I had this disability from birth. I struggled making friends because most of the activities weren't accessible to me because I have a trach, I have a ventilator, I have a wheelchair, I had nurses. I was not necessarily going to be the next track star. And so they realized that they needed to do something to make sure that I had a social life. So I'm just putting out there, I have some very cool parents. But they developed a 4-H club, and 4-H is for rural kids to do usually some sort of agricultural activity. Although my dad wanted me to show cows, I went the safer route and decided that I wanted to be involved in dog training. So from that, there's been 26 years, no, more than that. I'm going to pretend it's 26 years of 4-H, but if you do the math, that's a lie, because I'm not quite that young. But there have been years now of a club that was accessible for children with any type of disability and continues to be that for kids in Lawrence County, Pennsylvania. But something very special happened. And during that time, I recognized that there were very few fall activities that were accessible to kids like me. And so we developed this, what we called the Autumn Bash. The Autumn Bash was held at my parents' home, and we invited kids with disabilities and friends and family to be engaged and attend this all-inclusive hayride, pony rides, corn maze, because most of those aren't made for kids like me. And so we took something that was seen as impossible to make accessible and made it possible. It went on for 26 years until the pandemic, and I hope it comes back. But we had over 1,000 people come to each Autumn Bash. Like, think about that. One event at some kid's house gave kids across multiple counties the ability to enjoy a normal childhood activity with their family. And that's something you can do as well. Think about what it is in your community that not everyone can do. Think outside the box. It's not about the legally required curb cuts. It's not about how steep the ramp is. It's about your mindset and how you decide to make a difference. Yes, you need accessibility laws, but it means nothing if there's not someone who cares and wants to make it real. So I encourage all of you, use these experiences, these statements, these experts. Use us to help guide your work. I'm sure everyone would love to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie, for hopping on and sharing not only your story, but your words of wisdom. And you're right, change starts with one person, and it starts by small group of people deciding they want to make a difference. So thank everyone for being here tonight. And there are 2 questions in the chat, I believe. They are actually both for Monica. So I don't know if Monica wants to hop on real quick.
Okay.
I can read them to you if you like. And
Sure.
Okay, so question 1. Hi, Monica. What a horrible, sad story. I was born before the IDEA and the ADA also. I'm sort of glad that my mom and dad didn't figure out I had a disability. No, Lord knows where else I would have ended up. This is from Taylor. Her name's Taylor. After those bills became laws, what were the biggest ways that your life changed?
The biggest ways that my life changed were that I had protections, that if I needed an accommodation at work, I could ask for it and get it, and I wouldn't have to worry about losing my job. So I think that is the biggest change afterwards. I was well out of school, so I didn't have IEPs or anything to deal with, but definitely it changed the work environment for me, that I could, be accommodated when I needed to.
Hopefully that answers Taylor's question, if she's still here. Also, the next question is for you as well, from David. So it says, Monica, can you please describe a specific area or specific areas where the IEPs are not meeting student needs?
I have, I only know this from secondhand knowledge because I speak to parents of children with disabilities. And what I understand is somebody could ask for an aid for their child, or they could ask for speech therapy. And what happens is that the answer inevitably in the beginning is no. So the number of parents, what they need to do is they need to have somebody with them to advocate. And I have friends that do that for a living. And I think that that's excellent, because you do need somebody there to sort of remind people sometimes how the system needs to work. And it depends on it really depends on the school system. Every school system is different. Every county is different. Every township is different. That's one thing I learned having moved to Pennsylvania 10 years ago. So, and I hope I answered your question. That's the best I can do right now.
Thank you, Monica. We also have Tanya Schofling. I could have pronounced her name wrong, and I apologize. She wants to hop on. She's a deputy administrator for developmental programs for Bucks County. She didn't do a presentation, but she's here to help with the Q&A, and I see her chiming in the chat and helping to answer some questions. So I'll actually turn it over to Tanya and see if there's anything you want to add or say, or about the questions that were asked, or even just about your experience about working for with Bucks County.
Sure. So I've actually only been with the county since May, so I'm new to my role. However, I have worked in the field of developmental disabilities since I graduated from college. So I've been in the field for almost 25 years. So I'm excited to be with the county, though, because it gives me an opportunity to connect with so many other people and different departments and kind of work, more for the common good rather than just with one provider. But one thing I wanted to add to Monica's response regarding IEPs is working in the adult system. One of the biggest issues we see is a need for transition. Transition goals are often written into ISP or IEPs, but they're not really carried through. And parents find themselves struggling for services and supports once their child graduates from high school. So I think knowing what you want for your child after graduation is super important. And, having everybody in the education system on the same page and making sure that you're working toward those goals before graduation.
Thank you so much, Tanya, for being here tonight and chiming in.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. There's also, it's not a question, but a comment I wanted to make sure I read from a Lauren. She wanted everyone to know that October is actually it's also National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So that is good information to have and kind of timely for having this presentation tonight. So with that, we have about 5 minutes left. Going to turn it over to James real quick, as he's the host, to make sure there's nothing else. We've checked off all the boxes and nobody else to speak or any more questions. Feel free to put them in the chat and we'll address them as they come in, but I just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. So James.
Hey, I'm an open book, so any questions from anyone, including my panel, Anna, you, anyone, any questions, want to my brain, go right ahead. I can talk all night. I'm a big talker. And now we have 4 minutes.
Can I jump in for a minute?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So Anna, I don't know if you saw it, but in the chat, William had asked what agencies are available in the community to help folks with disabilities for things like transportation. So I did put 2 resources in the chat. I was hoping that you would see them, but I wasn't sure how the chat worked. So if there's a way for us to share those resources with the participants, that would be awesome. Can you not see my response?
No, I can. So I guess
Okay.
that's a good point. And I would think maybe Christina from the township would know if we can actually copy that information and email it out to the participants that requested a link. I'm sure that's something we can do and get that information out there. So, I mean, if you want, we can also, I can also read it. So to the question of helping folks with disabilities like transportation, which I believe was an issue that Rachel had brought to everyone's attention tonight as well. Tanya said there's various organizations in Bucks County that can make connections with services. There's 2 great resources here in Bucks County, the Center for Independent Living. She then gives a person's name and phone number and everything like that. I'm not going to read all that out. And then obviously the County Team and Service Department, the Hub, which I'm very familiar with, can also help make those connections. And the Hub is actually a newer service center that came to the county within the last 2 years, I believe, 2022 now. Yeah, so definitely within the last year or so after COVID. And they do amazing work. They help connect people to not only, disability service, but mental health services as well, homelessness, and all kinds of human services related issues here in Bucks County. So I'm sure we can get that information out to the folks who requested the panel. I believe there might be another question. Oh, somebody here, Claire, is actually the Director of Services at the Bucks County Center for Independent Living. So she is here. So this question is for James, and it comes from Miranda. So James, what has been the biggest win for you in your journey of sharing your disability awareness so far? And she wanted to also say, awesome job for putting together this webinar. It was great. Well, thank you, Miranda. So James, if you want to hop on and answer Miranda's question.
I'll try to do that very briefly, because I know we're right at the end. Well, you know what? Of all the accomplishments, the achievements, everything I've been able to do, all my work and the effort I've been able to put forth, it started with how I've been given that opportunity. And that's by being born to parents who welcomed me with open arms and gave me that chance to not listen to anyone else, not listen to doctors, listen to themselves and how they were going to raise me to become outspoken, outgoing, not follow a trend, to be a leader, and to be the best that I can be and know what's right for me. So anything I've been able to do, my parents have been my biggest influence. But, I do want to say one thing. Even though I cannot take all the credit, I'm very proud of my work. When the pandemic hit, I was unsure of what I was going to do about that. It put a big strain on how I was going to continue to spread awareness, continue to educate. And I feel like it almost fell into my lap. Some chances and opportunities happen that way. I found this wonderful training program called Trail, and it was actually conducted by Dr. Josie Badger. And I learned a lot through 4 versions of that advocacy program. which I've just completed the fourth, and I'm very happy with the work that we did as a group. And and from that, I was able to join the HRC. I was told that I would most likely be a great candidate to join that group. I applied, and now here I am hosting my very first webinar. And I'm just, I'm taken aback, and there's no words to describe the feeling that I have, the great feeling that I have. I'm very appreciative of my panel, to Anna, to all who attended, Christina, Stephanie, Chad, who put this all together tech-wise. I'm just very thankful and very grateful. So any little thing or any big thing is a win for me.
Thank you, James. So I did want to mention as we're closing out here, because it's 8:02, if you want the information emailed to you, because everybody got the information for the webinar from different locations, from the chat, any of the answers, question answer segment emailed to you directly. If you put your email into the chat, the township will be able to then send you the chat conversation via email. But I did want to mention that this video will be posted on the Middletown Township's YouTube page. And we will also put all the information in the description about tonight's event and different links that were shared and resources. So I did want to mention those two things before we close out, and I'm just going to check the Q&A real quick and make sure I didn't miss any questions. But I think folks are also now chiming into the Q&A and answering each other's questions in here. So that is great. I think I got everybody's questions. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for participating tonight. I think this was a really great event. When the HRC was created back in 2020, this was kind of the vision that I hoped it would take, and we would have different educational sessions about how we as a community can be better allies to individuals, and to make sure that we give folks a seat at the table. So thank you all for attending tonight. Thank you for participating, asking questions, and being engaging. And I hope we all learned how we can be better allies to our friends and folks in the disability community. So thank you, James, for heading this up and being part of the HRC. And thank you to the HRC for putting this together and organizing it and hosting. So with that, I'm Anna Payne, Township Supervisor, and I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you.